Okay, guys, so today we're going over the Great Depression and New Deal. It's after the Roaring Twenties, and in 1929, the stock market crashes. That's the beginning of the Great Depression. Now, causes of the Great Depression is overproduction. One, companies are producing too much to where Americans aren't buying. They're still on the wartime spending, so that's not a good thing. Speculation. One, it leads to the stock market crash of 1929, and what speculation means is that you're taking out loans for investment, and it becomes very difficult for you to actually make money off of it if everybody's able to do that. Uneven distribution of income, right? The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Shaky banking practices, the fact that banks are lending money to really anyone causes, the Great Depression as well. And restricted international trade. After World War I, the United States decided to go into this isolationist idea where they weren't going to do business with people overseas or other countries. So what they do is they create high taxes, those are your tariffs, so that way you can buy more American-made things. And it restricts international trade. So these are the main causes of the Great Depression. Now, the human impact of depression, of the depression, no safety net. You have high unemployment, bank failures, and foreclosures. So really, you had nothing to fall back on. Recording the misery. You have two important people during this time. Dorothea Lange, which she photographed the Great Depression, right? The people of the migration of people in the country, the Dust Bowl, everything else that was going on, and John Steinbeck. He wrote The Grapes of Wrath, and a couple of other stories, which included sufferings of migrant families and, what people were going through during the Great Depression. And of course, the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. Heavy winds carried that loose topsoil caused by the farmers who overproduced on the land. It put it all up in the air, and it buried homes and destroyed harvests, which are your farms or your farming seasons. Now, Hoover was the president in 1928. 1929, we have the Depression, or the stock market crash. He stays in office for a while. Until the next election. 1932, FDR comes to power as president. So his philosophy and style. One, he had a brain trust, a group of advisors to him, all right, to help him guide him and the country out of the Great Depression. He also had these fireside chats that Roosevelt would do. He would use a radio to talk to the people, and that way they knew exactly what was going on to give them that confidence back into the government. The New Deal was FDR's plan for lifting the nation out of the Great Depression, and his first 100 days was what he actually did the first 100 days as president. And he called it relief, recovery, reform. These are the three things his program, or the New Deal, was targeting. The first one is relief, and this targets, it's a short-term actions designed to help people over until the recovery of the economy, right? He's just, let me help you right now until it gets going again. The first thing he did was a bank holiday. He closed all banks, and they restructured the banking system. He created jobs to get people back to work, and with this one, it was like the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, where you hired men from 18 to 25 to go work on bridges and roads, so on and so forth. The Public Works Administration and the Works Progress Administration, which did the same thing, but it was for all ages. They built roads, they built bridges, buildings, structures, so on and so forth. Recovery. To restore incentives to produce, priming the pump, putting more money out into the economy so that way more people can start buying things. The National Recovery Administration and the Agricultural Adjustment Act. Remember, there was two Agricultural Adjustment Acts. One actually told farmers how much they could actually farm, which was later declared unconstitutional. The government can't tell you how to run your business. It's part of the free market economy. And the second one, it actually just let them make as much as they wanted, and then the government would buy that food from them if they wouldn't sell it. So that way they would still be able to pay off their farms. They'll still be able to get money and pay off their farms as needed. Reform: measures to remedy defects of the U.S. economy to prevent future depressions. These are the ones that we still have enacted today. The FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. This one deals with banks. I told y'all before, you go to a bank, make sure it has that symbol for the FDIC. It ensures bank deposits and people's confidence in the nation's banks. For example, if you have $100,000 in the bank closes, your money is insured, right? The money, you will still get that money back. The SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, was a watchdog agency over the stock market to prevent another crash. So when it was getting close, where the market was dropping, then they would regulate how the stock market was handled. And of course, the Social Security Act. It provided a safety net for workers with unemployment insurance, old age pensions, and insurance for families who died early. So these are the three things, and we still have them enacted today. Now, monetary policy. Not only did FDR fix, the fiscal policy, but monetary policy as well. Now, he created the Federal Reserve, which is the ability to reduce swings in the economy by controlling the ability of banks to lend money. If the economy was going down, then the government would limit as to how much money they can actually lend out to prevent, another depression from happening. The gold standard was how we used to run. It's metal being able to be traded for money. It was outlawed in 1933, and the reason why is FDR wanted everybody to have fiat money, which is paper money, and that's the way we're going to do business. It outlawed anybody to own, gold bars. Now the only kind of gold you can own was jewelry. Okay, that's the monetary policy. Okay, so what is too much power, right? The government was giving the president too much power to control businesses, so on and so forth. So there was a court case, Shelter Poultry versus the United States in 1937, and here the Supreme Court ruled that even during a national crisis, Congress could not give the president more powers than was granted in the Constitution. The Supreme Court was rolling down on FDR, and he was extremely nervous that more and more of his legislation was going to be declared unconstitutional. He wanted to tell the businesses on how to run or limit, their production, and you can't do that, not in a free market economy. So what FDR proposes is going to be known later on as his court packing scheme. He felt that the justices on the Supreme Court, remember, the Supreme Court justices are there until you die. You don't have a limit. Most of the Supreme Court justices, 6 to be exact out of the 9, were over the age of 70. And he felt that they were out of the times. So what he wanted to do was be allowed to put in for every Supreme Court justice over the age of 70, he was able to bring in someone new, a new Supreme Court justice, to balance it out. And of course, it did not pass. But what he wanted to do was ultimately end up giving him more power because they would go in favor of him, right? So that's his court packing scheme, okay? And the last thing here, guys, just a quick reminder of the key individuals. Herbert Hoover, he was a president during the Depression. He's the one that believed in this rugged individualism, that the economy will take care of itself. The people are running themselves. It's a good time. Sooner or later, poverty will be over. We know that doesn't happen at the end of his term. At the beginning of his term in 1929. The stock market crashes. So many people going into poverty. That's known as Hoovervilles. They were named after Herbert Hoover. These are your slums and areas of poverty throughout the United States. Okay, so that was the president before FDR. Now, Franklin D. Roosevelt, he created the New Deal legislation, became president in 1932, gets us out of the Great Depression and into World War II. John Steinbeck, he was the writer for the Great Depression, and of course, Eleanor Roosevelt was a political activist. This is wife to FDR, and she served as his eyes and ears here on the home front. Once we get into World War II, or a little bit later into the Great Depression and New Deal, we're going to see how she focuses a lot more on domestic affairs here at home, and he deals more with foreign affairs, anything overseas. Okay, so after the Great Depression and New Deal, what officially ends the Great Depression is going to be the United States getting into World War II, which is the next subject.